Welcome to Human Nutrition. Now, the idea of this video is going to give you an overview of some of the core concepts, some of the basic ideas that we'll touch on throughout the course. The idea here, learn as much as you can, have a little fun, and let's explore nutrition. So, what is nutrition? That's probably the biggest question you can ask. Is nutrition the food you eat? Is nutrition going to be the choices of the foods? Is nutrition the energy to power you? Really, what is nutrition? It's all of those. When we start looking at nutrition, we're looking at a total of 6 different main categories. There's going to be 4 categories of macronutrients, and then 2 categories of micronutrients. So those 4 macronutrients, looking at carbohydrates, looking at proteins, lipids, and water. The micronutrients, those are going to be your vitamins and your minerals. So let's start thinking about why they call macro and micronutrients. Macro, meaning you need those in larger quantities. Micro, meaning you need those in smaller quantities. So we'll start off with the carbohydrates. Now, the carbohydrates, I'm sure you've all heard of carbs before. Is it great to make a whole diet just of carbs? It's great for energy, but you're probably missing some other items, missing some components. So really, carbohydrates are broken down into simple carbohydrates and complex carbohydrates. We'll deal with those more later in the video series, but when you're thinking about carbohydrates, the complex carbohydrates, you can think of things like starch, glycogen. Those are going to be storage units for plants and animals, respectively. All the carbohydrates can be looking at in the form of polymer or even monomers, but the polymers are made up of the monomers, the smaller units. The smaller units of carbohydrates are going to be the monosaccharides. The larger units are the polysaccharides. Probably the most common of the monosaccharides is going to be glucose. Now, that's not the only one. There's many others. But a lot of times your body is going to take those others and break them down into glucose, because that's really what your body's mechanisms can use to create energy. And energy is one of the biggest things that carbohydrates will do. They're a faster form of energy. Maybe you heard about carb loading or having a pasta dinner before a big sporting event. The idea was to get a lot of energy in quickly and have a quick release of that energy. But these are all things to talk about when we get to that topic later in the course. Your second of the macromolecules is going to be lipids. Lipids, you can also think of more as fats. But lipids, while the carbohydrates were polymers and monomers, lipids are not polymers. Instead, we have a couple different types of lipids. One of the types of lipids is going to be triglycerides. Now, triglycerides, tri being 3, means it has 3 fatty acid tails. But we'll get into all those structures and pieces and parts more when we get to that in the course. But the important thing about triglycerides is they can be your energy source. Now, the difference being the triglycerides are more of a longer term energy source, not the fast as carbohydrates. Another type of lipid is going to be the phospholipid. Now, with phospholipids, you don't really use those as energy typically. The phospholipid is going to be used more for the membranes of your cells. It'll be the key component that makes up your cell membranes of pretty much every cell in your body. So still really important, but now it's dealing with the actual structure of cells, not energy. Third category, sterols. Now, sterols, you might have heard things like cholesterol, again, part of the membrane. So it's dealing with your cell membrane. But you also have some sterols that are hormones. Now, hormones are going to be messengers in your bloodstream. Think of the endocrine system hormones. So these hormones can travel in your bloodstream to send signals to other parts of your body. Well, that's what some of the sterols are. So we have your triglycerides, your phospholipids, and your sterols. So the energy production, again, going back to that one of the most common tissues in your body that stores energy in the form of lipids is adipose tissue. Now, a lot of times you'll hear adipose tissue referred to as fat tissue. It stores the triglycerides. That can be good for helping with metabolism in the future because it has an energy source. It can be good for an insulation factor, making sure you don't get too warm or too cool a little bit. It can have many different factors, all coming from your lipids. But there's a whole lot more to talk about those later. Let's move on to the third one, proteins. Now, proteins, again, are not going to be a primary energy source in this case. They can be energy, but they wouldn't really give you a whole lot. So really, with proteins, you're again looking at polymers because the individual building block is amino acids. In total, there are 20 different amino acids, and we'll talk about those more when we get to this chapter. But for now, your proteins, again, are building blocks. They're functional units inside your body. The reason being, with these proteins, they're doing the work of the cells. They're structures. They're helping make up the cell structure. They're also enzymes. Now, enzymes are going to be kind of like the machinery that helps the cell and the body run. Enzymes will allow your body to go through metabolic processes, think chemical reactions, and go through these processes at a speed that will be beneficial to the body. Well, what are they doing? They're helping to speed up the reaction. Well, think of it this way. If you're baking cupcakes, baking muffins, whichever, and you put it on top of the stove, would they ever bake? Yeah, maybe a couple weeks. Yeah, it could be a while. It's not really something you want to wait around for. Hence the oven, the temperatures, help to cause the reactions to occur quicker. Now, I don't know about you guys, but I don't run at 400 degrees Fahrenheit. So our body temperature, give or take about 98.6, 9.4, can't just be cranked up to make things run faster. Instead, the enzymes help us to allow these reactions to occur at our temperatures faster. So kind of an important thing there, helping our bodies to go through all these different reactions. Well, proteins also can be receptors. Receptors are on your cells to receive signals that cause them to do their actions. Well, all this is part of what proteins are. They're all meant to lower the energy of action. With those enzymes, you're looking at receptors, all built on amino acids. All right, fourth macromolecule. We're talking about water. Now, water has 0 caloric benefit. There's no energy, but yet you still need it. Water might arguably be one of the most important components of your body. Why? Well, you're give or take about 60% water. Water must be consumed on a daily basis for health. Water is going to help with transportation of nutrients, transportation of blood cells, helps with body temperature regulation, helps with a whole list of different components that are functional because of water in your body. So really, water is a pretty important component that we'll again talk about more later on. So anytime you're talking about nutrition, you've got to talk about water in there. All right, so the 4 macromolecules set. How about those 2 micromolecules? The 2 micromolecules are vitamins and minerals. Now, the difference being vitamins are organic, minerals are inorganic. So things like vitamins, vitamin C, vitamin B12, vitamin B6, vitamin A, vitamin D, those are all organic compounds. While the minerals are inorganic. Things like iron, things like phosphorus, sodium, we still need them, but they're inorganic. And the reason they're called micronutrients, micro meaning small, we need them in small quantities. So our vitamins and our minerals. All right, so we've got those 6 different categories. But how do you make sure you balance those? What do you do? That's where it comes down into the idea of food quality. And it's not looking at, is it rotten or good? Food quality is looking at the composition that the food's made of. Does it have a high range of the 6 different components? Or how many different components does it have? The idea is you're looking for foods that are high in various different components, while a lot of times aren't necessarily high in caloric intake. Well, I bet you've heard, eat your vegetables, eat your fruits. Well, that's why. Fruits and vegetables, as well as lean protein, have a high variety and a high amount of those different components that we need without being high on the caloric scale usually. Now, if you think about some things that are poor choices, potato chips, or you're constantly eating fried food out, those might not have that same balance. And that's where we're coming in to look into. What is a proper diet? And there's no one answer. Let me get that straight. A great diet for one person might not work for somebody else. There's a huge variation of what works for each person. Now, with that being said, is diet alone enough? A lot of times you look into exercise also. And exercise can vary depending on the individual. Your age, gender, a lot of different factors can factor in to what exercise is appropriate for you. Do you have some injury? Well, then your exercise may look different. Do you live in an environment that's always cold outside? Maybe you don't like to exercise outside than that. Maybe you're exercising inside then. Maybe you're in a warmer environment. Great to exercise outside. Maybe you like a particular sport that feels more like fun than it does exercise. All those are ways of getting moving. Or it could simply be, hey, you know what? I love cleaning the house. I'm constantly going through every week, the whole entire house. That can be a great workout. Exercise and physical activity can take many different forms, just like a proper diet can take many different forms. So as we move through this whole entire journey, the idea is, let's figure out what's the best for you, and if there's anything you can improve on, or if, hey, maybe you've got perfect already and it's going great, just keep on going. Until the next video.